Good evening. It's now 6 o'clock. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. So we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Would the city clerk please call the roll?
Yes. Council members Judith Chandler,
Present.
John Shada, Julie Wolf,
Here.
Natalie Johnson,
Here.
Steve Brimner. Thank you. He is on our telephonic conference call here. Mayor Pro Tem Nancy Fortune
Present.
and Mayor John Graham.
Present, thank you. Okay, and next item is the approval of the agenda, and I believe we have interest in adding an item. Mayor Pro Tem, please.
Yeah, I would like to move approval of the agenda with the addition of a G5 Becker's Lane Bridge proclamation.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Chandler. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion is adopted.
Aye.
With the amendment. Thank you, Steve. Okay, great. Next item is public comment on non-agenda items. So if there's anyone in the audience tonight who'd like to speak to something that's not on the agenda, this would be the time to do it. Do we have anyone? Sir? Oh, do we have a copy of the agenda? It's over here. You want to take a look at it there? Is the item you're interested on the agenda? Okay, what is your concern?
Come to the microphone.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's determine.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's the topic?
Just an update on the mask mandate.
Name and
Okay.
Is that on the agenda?
Well, we are going to discuss COVID, but it's going to be a little bit. So what we'll do here is we'll take your comments. First, we need your full name and address, and then you have 3 minutes, okay?
Okay, thank you. My name is Ross Wagle. I live on 2 Stover Lane up Crystal Park Road. And when I came here, it was, I think, the end of August. I just had a request that we would have an understanding of why the mask mandate was put in place and what metrics would be used to decide when to lift the mandate. So I just wanted an update on that. If we have any sort of if we hit a certain number of cases, are those going to be lifted, et cetera. I have a background in engineering is my degree. So I haven't seen a scientific study that says that masks actually are effective. I'd like to see something along those lines. There was a comment that they stopped some water droplets, and I think that's agreeable, but I also am a runner, and I've gone outside when you can see your breath, and I've worn a mask, and you can still see your breath through a mask. So my question is the effectiveness of the mask. If we're going to mandate that for people in the city, if we can have just some sort of study that supports why we're wearing masks. And also from studying the effects over the states, I think in the meeting where you decided on the mask mandate, New York City was referenced, and that has some of the highest COVID cases and COVID deaths. They've had a mask mandate, and so my question is, what are we trying to be like? You've also have states that have no mask mandates, and they've been just like every other state. So there's not really evidence that masks are effective. So I just would like some sort of study or reasoning behind the mask mandate, if that's something required. I think Superintendent Domingue mentioned too with the task force that there'd be an update sometimes. That's part of why I'm here. And also,
Yes, the update will be later on. It'll be towards the end of the meeting, though, so perhaps it'd be best if you'd stay for that portion of the meeting. You can get an update on it then.
okay. And if I do have to leave, I'll just watch the
Okay.
replay on YouTube.
That'd be fine, yeah.
Thank you. So I think that was, so then you have some states that had no masks, and there's really next to no difference with the effects of COVID. It kind of seems to impact people no matter what the mask situation is. So again, just my agenda item would be to have some understanding why we put the mask mandate in place. Is there some studies, some proof of that? Oh, what I was going to say about Superintendent Deming is she said there would be hopefully a medical professional on the task force to help us understand why masks would be helpful if that is the case. So just looking for some updates. This is, I haven't been to city council until this year, and so just want to know how that updates work. And when I was here, when the first meeting after the mask mandate, there was a lot of people who had some objections to the masks, and I didn't know if that's something that would be addressed after those objections, if there's any sort of a reply or a response to those objections.
All right, very good, thank you. All right. Do we have any additional comments or non-agenda item topics? I guess not. Okay, let's move on to the consent calendar. We have 2 items on tonight's consent calendar. First is approval of the September 7th, 2021 regular meeting minutes. The second item is consideration of approval to the City Council of the recommendation by the Match Board for the 2021 distribution of funds for Hiawatha Gardens. Do we have a motion to approve and accept?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Seconded by Councilor Wolf. All in favor say aye. Aye. The consent calendar is approved. And Mr. Bremner was okay, so then it's unanimous. All right, so we have several proclamations this evening. The first one is the Creek Week Proclamation, and I believe we have someone out in telephone land who'd like to speak to this. So Judy, can you bring her in?
Steve, just so you know, I'm going to bring somebody else on the line, so it might go quiet for a minute, but you should come back, okay?
Hello?
Hi, this is Allie.
Yes.
Okay, Allie, I'm going to push a button and you should be on the conference phone here. Here you go.
Ellie, if you
Okay.
could.
Good evening. Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, could you introduce yourself, please, and give us your address?
Yes. My name is Allie Shook, and I live at 2635 Christopher Terrace in Colorado Springs, 80907.
Thank you. You have the floor.
Great. Well, thank you for having me this evening. My name is Allie Shook. I am the outreach coordinator for the Fountain Creek Watershed Flood Control and Greenway District. And the Watershed District's work protects the people and property of the region through flood control, development of trails and recreational spaces, wetlands protection, maintaining our clean water, and engaging the community with events such as Creek Week. Creek Week is now Colorado's largest watershed-wide cleanup, and over the past 7 years, we've removed well over 100 tons of litter from Palmer Lake to Pueblo. This 9-day event is easy, it's fun, and it's gratifying because you can see those results instantly, and it really is developing a cadre of watershed warriors working for cleaner and safer communities. Much of the work our volunteers do happens in our extensive parks and trails, and our volunteers know the value of having those in good condition. We're grateful to our partners here in the city of Manitou, and I particularly want to recognize Mayor Pro Tem Fortune for her post-service on the Watershed District Board. You know, this is really a collaborative effort, and we would not be successful as we have been without your all's involvement. So with that, I'd like to invite everyone to pick a date, pick a location, and pick it up. Creek Week starts this Saturday, September 25th, and runs 9 days through October 3rd. We have over 40 public cleanups for everyone to choose from. And in Manitou, your event is scheduled for this Saturday, beginning at 9 o'clock at the pool, and that's being run by your city employee, Eric Carlson. And then I also want to shout out to Lisa Caniza, who's a teacher at Manitou Elementary School. And once again, she's facilitating a cleanup for every single class at the elementary school. So really great effort on her behalf, and what a great thing for those kids to have that experience at such a young age. So appreciate you all hearing me out this evening.
Great, thank you. And with that, I'll go ahead and read the proclamation recognizing Creek Week 2021. Whereas the city of Manitou Springs is fortunate to have extensive, beautiful, and diverse natural resources, such as forests, grasslands, riparian areas, lakes, creeks, and a wide variety of open spaces. And whereas the Fountain Creek Watershed is a unique and important resource, an asset to the residents and visitors of Manitou Springs and the Pikes Peak region. And whereas the Fountain Creek Watershed Flood Control and Greenway District is partnering with the city of Colorado Springs, El Paso County, Pueblo County, and the cities of Manitou Springs, Fountain, and the towns of Monument and Green Mountain Falls, and numerous community organizations to coordinate the 8th annual Creek Week cleanup, which will encourage the protection, restoration, and maintenance of the Fountain Creek Watershed. And whereas this 9-day litter cleanup effort runs September 25th through October 3rd, 2021, throughout the watershed, and now is the largest cleanup effort in our state. And whereas Creek Week programs and activities are designed to raise awareness about the littering issue within our watershed, to encourage organizations and individuals to collect litter and debris to make Fountain Creek and the watershed cleaner and safer. And whereas businesses, churches, schools, nonprofits, neighborhood associations, youth groups, service clubs, and individuals are encouraged to form a creek crew to clean up at a Creek Week project site. And whereas Creek Week litter removal activities will reduce pollution in our creeks and clogs in our waterways that can lead to flooding, provide for a safer drinking water supply, and enhance wildlife habitat and property values. Now, therefore, we, the Manitou Springs City Council, hereby proclaim the September 25th, October 3, 2021 time as Creek Week in the city of Manitou Springs, and encourage our citizens to help protect, restore, and maintain our waterways by participating in Creek Week activities. Dated this 21st day of September in the city of Manitou Springs, Colorado. Thank you. Nancy, I probably should have had you read that since you're really close to it, but thank you all for your efforts in keeping the waterways clean.
And
you very
thanks to Allie for all her great work, because she has done an amazing job with Creek Week over the past however many years it's been, Allie. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Allie.
Okay, we'll see you around the waterway.
Do any counselors would like to make a comment at this point? I guess not. Let's push on then. The next item is Manitou Springs Arts Month Proclamation. 'Tis the season for proclamations. October is Arts Month in the Pikes Peak region. Whereas the month of October is recognized as National Arts and Humanities Month by thousands of arts and cultural organizations, communities, and states across the country, as well as by the White House and Congress for more than 2 decades. And whereas the arts and humanities embody much of the accumulated wisdom, intellect, and imagination of humankind and have inspired the development of our city from its earliest days. And whereas the arts and humanities enhance the daily lives of every American, including those of us living at the base of Pikes Peak. And whereas these pursuits connect, entertain, and enrich the lives of our students, families, and communities through vital moments of creative expression. Whereas the nonprofit arts industry also strengthens our national and local economies by generating $166.3 billion in total economic activity annually. That's $153.3 million of annual economic impact in the Pikes Peak region, and by supporting the full-time equivalent of 4.6 million jobs across the nation. That equates to 5,070 jobs locally. And whereas Manitou Springs is a thriving, vibrant arts and culture scene and is nationally recognized as one of the top towns for art and artists, and whereas the aforementioned arts and culture scene makes Manitou Springs a well-established and desirable destination for art lovers, and whereas Manitou Springs, through its artists, galleries, and arts events, upholds a town culture that strives to make art inclusive, accessible, and affordable to all, and whereas the people of Manitou Springs voted to support its nonprofits and artists financially through a sales tax because they recognize that art is not free. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Manitou Springs City Council do hereby proclaim October as Arts Month in Colorado's Pikes Peak region and call upon our citizens to celebrate and promote the arts and culture in Manitou Springs and to specifically encourage the greater participation by those said citizens in taking action for the arts and humanities in their community. dated this 21st day of September in the city of Manitou Springs. And Natalie, I thank you. I believe you were the author of that proclamation. It's very nice. Any comments from council? Okay, let's push on. Okay. I'm sorry, we have another proclamation. That'll be G5. So the next item is presentation of the Historic District Survey Inventory Plan. We'll be getting an update from Michelle. Michelle, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I wanted to just kind of close the loop on this. Most of you are aware that we were working on this survey plan to basically give us a roadmap for getting the district entirely surveyed and inventoried. We were encouraged to do the plan both for our own benefit and by the state. They've approved the plan. They funded it. They funded the plan, and that gives them a certain level of comfort that that it was done appropriately and it met all of their guidelines and requirements, which also gives us some comfort as far as that goes. So it was a very good process. We did have some public participation, not a ton, but we did have some people that were interested that you could see logged on and at least listened, do the different presentations. And so the plan actually came in on time and a little under budget, which is always good to report. I just couldn't find a project consultant that I was more pleased with working with them, their expertise and just, personalities and willingness to do whatever we needed. And they were just very good people to work with and nice to be around, which is always a bonus. I did have this on the agenda as an actual action item, but we've actually done these both ways, where we've done them just as a, making council aware and the status update. Other plans we've done where they've been an actual motion taken. I don't think it's mandatory that you all take a motion, but I did want to get it in front of you and like I said, kind of close the loop, bring everybody up to date, and then moving forward, we'll be using this survey plan as the way to figure out what areas we should be concentrating on. We may not be taking everything in exactly the order, because sometimes if there's less funding available, we need to look for a section that maybe costs a little less. If there's more funding available, we may lump a couple of areas together, that type of thing. But I would certainly hope, kind of in my heart of hearts, that we might be able to get the district surveyed maybe completely over the next 5 years or so. It would be great if we could do it faster, but I think trying to be realistic. It's been a long time, and if we were able to get that done, that would be a huge benefit to the city and to the preservation program. So I'm happy to answer questions, and if anybody has any, and just continue on.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Council, do we have questions or comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, Michelle, we briefly discussed this, but I just wanted to ask either you or Denise if this was being budgeted for the next year and the year after and the year after.
Yes.
It's considered, okay. No, that's
Denise
good
is
to hear.
shaking her head.
Because when I looked at how much it's, the 3 phases or whatever, it's a lot of money, but it absolutely needs to be done. So 5 years may even be a bit optimistic, but as long as it's budgeted, then we have a chance. So
Yes.
thank you. It was a very interesting read, by the way.
Good.
I enjoy history, and it was, I learned a lot about Manitou.
Good.
So, thanks.
Good, you're welcome.
Anyone else? Denise?
I just want to mention, when Michelle presented this, you guys approved the budget for that. So of course it will go in every year, and then you guys have the decision whether you to keep it or not, but it is budgeted for next year at this time.
Yes, thank you. I think our sentiment at the time was it was going to be a sustained effort and it would take a while, so it's consistent with our earlier expectations.
Thank you.
Anything else? I guess not. Okay, Michelle, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item is the Manitou Springs School District presentation on their capital improvement program.
Mayor,
Yeah, I
they,
believe
as Elizabeth mentioned last week, they do have a meeting up in Green Mountain Falls, and this is moving quicker than anticipated. Wondering if we could move on to the next agenda item
Yeah,
until she can arrive, if that's okay with you.
if council has no objections, we'll just push through in the order we've got things, and when Elizabeth gets here, we'll come back to this item, if that's okay. Any objection? Okay, hearing none, we'll push on. That takes us to item G5. That was the added item. And that is a proclamation for the Becker's Lane Bridge dedication. Now, that will be this Saturday at, that's September 25th. That'll be at 10 o'clock in the morning at the Becker's Lane Bridge. Okay. Whereas the completion of the Becker's Lane Bridge is a significant milestone in the improvement of the area known as the Manitou Springs Urban Renewal Area, and whereas the Manitou Springs Urban Renewal Authority has been a catalyst for enhancing economic development and community improvement within the East Side Urban Renewal Area to build a more beautiful, accessible, functional, and viable corridor, and whereas citizen leadership is instrumental in creating the public-private partnerships that identify such opportunities for improvement and develop the resources to complete such improvement, and whereas Marcy Morrison, in her roles both as a private citizen as well as an elected and appointed official, carried forward her vision for the improvement of the urban renewal area and has been a significant force in promoting Manitou Springs community and economic development interests by helping stand up the government funding mechanism to create the Manitou Springs Urban Renewal Authority. Now, therefore, we, the Manitou Springs City Council, do hereby proclaim the dedication of the newly completed Becker's Lane Bridge and honor Marcy Morrison for her significant contributions to the city of Manitou Springs, the community of the Pikes Peak region, and the state of Colorado. Thank you. And I would encourage everyone to attend the bridge dedication this Saturday. Okay, and the creek one. Yeah, comments? Councilor Chandler, that was a good point. Please.
I was just going to say, for those of you who are wondering how you're going to make it to Creek Walk cleanup right after that, just go right from there over to Shriver, and we'll be welcoming you over there to help us clean up Fountain Creek. Thank you.
It's at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock this Saturday, Becker's Lane. Anything else? Okay. All right. So we have 3 individuals to be appointed to city boards tonight. First, we have the approval of Kinsey Zaire Watts as a regular member of the Manitou Springs Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board, the Match Committee. Is Kinsey here? Kinsey, hi, would you like to come up and take the microphone? If you'll give us your name and address first.
Hello. Yes, I'm Kinsey Watts. I live at 829 Midland Avenue.
Great, thank you. If you'd like to make a brief statement, that would be okay. The council may have some questions for you.
Sure. I recognize some familiar faces. I am an artist and a software engineer, and I've lived in Manitou for about 5 years, but my family's been in the Springs area since '97, so for quite a while. And I am very interested in being on the Match board. I think it will be a great opportunity to meet people and be connected and also have a say in everything we're doing creatively.
Great, thank you. And in our council packet, we did see your application in the letter of recommendation for you. So at this point, I'd like to give council the opportunity to ask questions or make comments. Do we have Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that both Kinsey and Ralph, whose also application is in for tonight from the Match Board, both of them have been at least the past 2 meetings of the Match Board, so they know what they're getting themselves into, and it's not an easy task. Ralph's already dug in and started working, and Kinsey promised that as soon as she's appointed, she would really dig in and start working as well. So I know the board is very excited to have them on board.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve Kenzie Zaire Watts as a regular member of the Manitou Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Motion is second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kinsey. Great. And our next item, approval of Ralph Rutin as a regular member of the Manitou Springs Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board. Ralph, would you come forward, please? And Ralph, it's come to my attention that the bulletin is looking for a little juicier copy out of the city council meetings now. And it seems like this is our opportunity to ask some questions. So you're on the spot, my man.
Okay.
Okay. First, we'll let you make a brief set of remarks in your own defense. Read your address.
I'm Ralph Rutin. Lived at 114 Palisades Circle in Crystal Hills. I've lived there 14 years and have lived in Manitou for most of the last 31 or so years. As long as I was working, and the nature of the work being in the newspaper business, it obviously meant that I couldn't serve in this kind of a way, although I've been on numerous nonprofit boards. But after a while, after retiring a few years ago, I was starting to look for opportunities, and when I saw this one come up, it just seemed like the right time and the right opportunity. I've supported Match in the campaign and want to do everything I can to help both with community awareness, with helping perhaps the process of educating potential grant recipients, and hopefully building more and more respect and support around the community, because we all remember how close the vote was, and I just want to help in any way I can.
Very good, thank you. Council, questions or comments? Looks like you're going to get off easy, Ralph.
I would like to say one thing. I remain on the board of the Creative District, which has a relationship with Match, and it might lead to me needing to recuse myself occasionally when certain items come up. Just wanted to say that, you know, it's already come up and it's something that we'll be sensitive to, and I don't want to presume anything there. I know about from the other side of the fence about conflict of interest, and want to avoid that as at all possible.
Good, yeah, thanks for clarifying that. That's nice to have that out in front. Mayor Pro Tem.
I just want to say, and as Ralph knows, but it's, the community needs to know as well, the Match Board does have a process to avoid conflict of interest. So Ralph has already made that apparent to them as well. And with that, I'd like to move to approve Ralph's appointment to the Match Board.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Mr. Bremner? Aye. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Ralph, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the next item, approval of C. Susan Presti as a regular member of the Historic Preservation Commission. Susan, you want to come forward? If you could introduce yourself and maybe make a few remarks, that'd be great.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am Susan Presti. I live at 114 Cave Avenue. I've been in the community and owned that property for over 25 years. And I'm the fourth generation of my husband's family to own and live in that house. So we have a long commitment to this community. And I'm very excited to have the opportunity to serve the community now that I too am retired. It gives me more time. And I would look forward to supporting the work of this council, and especially to preserving the unique historic character of our community.
Good, thank you. Questions or comments for Susan? Okay, if not, I'd entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Shada and a second by Councilor Chandler. All in favor, say aye. Aye? Aye. All right, motion passes unanimously. Susan, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Okay, next item. Initiative proposal. This is for, initially, I'm going to speak a little bit here, kind of clarify things for the audience. We've had an initiative presented. The matter calls for changes to our marijuana ordinance, which would allow for a third marijuana business. In the official title here, we have first reading of ordinance number 1121, an ordinance amending the Manitou Springs Municipal Code, Title 5, Chapter 5.09, Section 5.09.100, regarding location and application criteria for medical and retail marijuana establishments. Council has received a draft of the proposed ordinance. This came from a petition effort. And because of the way that works, council essentially we have two options. One is we can take the ordinance as it's been drafted, and within 30 days we can approve it. It would become law. The other option is that we set a date and it would go out to a general election. That way all the registered Manitou electors would get to vote on this. That election would be between 60 and 150 days from now, or from the submission of the petition. So I guess I'd like to start off by getting kind of a check the temperature from City Council. Since we really have two options, we can, let's decide whether we want to entertain the idea of the ordinance, acting on it within 30 days, or if we're probably more interested in sending it to a vote. Mr. Shada.
Mr. Mayor, I guess I'd like to make some clarifying remarks because I think possibly people in the public don't understand kind of the process and where we are. I guess one of the first things is that essentially it's not a draft ordinance. I believe we either have to pass this or not, so we don't get to change anything. So I think that was probably just a slip of the tongue, correct?
Yes, I didn't realize
Yeah,
I
yeah,
even said that.
exactly.
I mean, we have to pass it.
We're used to saying it's a draft ordinance.
I'm
on
sorry,
first reading.
yes, and it is. We would have to take it verbatim or not at all.
Exactly. So this is an initiative ordinance, and the city clerk, please also wave wildly if I veer off course on my little speech here. This is an initiative ordinance, which means that a citizen group went out, wrote the ordinance, collected the signatures, okay? And according to our city charter, when a sufficient number of signatures, and the clerk has verified that, are collected, then this type of thing almost is automatically on our agenda. And essentially the way this happens is if we pass it, it then becomes law. If we duck the process, in other words, if we just don't even put it on the agenda, or we turn the ordinance down in a vote, then it automatically goes to a special election. Judy?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to kind of clarify kind of where we are, because if you read this ordinance here, it sort of kind of implies that we as a body up here cooked this thing up, and we did not. It's essentially before us. And usually the way an ordinance works is we have a first reading, and then if it passes on first reading, it goes to a second reading, which is typically a public hearing, and then if it passes in the second reading, it becomes law. So that's where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. And John, I guess, Denise, go ahead.
I just want to mention, our attorney Jeff Parker is also on the line if we need any advice. So Jeff Parker
Exactly.
is on the line.
I was hoping he would scream if I said something wrong. Thank you.
Jeff?
I'm not screaming. You got it all right.
Okay, he gets at least a passing grade, maybe an A. That's great.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and I think it'd be helpful, council, if you have a sense of whether you want to entertain the ordinance or whether you want to send it to a vote for the people. Tonight, that might simplify things. Yeah, please, John.
I would hope the city clerk and maybe the city attorney would clarify kind of our options here. In other words, does the charter prescribe us to have a first and second reading? If we do nothing, what's the timetable? I think that would be kind of helpful to kind of understand, the options ahead of us, because normally those are options we have.
Yeah, I'd be happy to address that, Judy, if that works for you.
That'd be great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Your charter has a whole section on initiative petitions, which this falls under, but it doesn't specifically address, the first and second reading issue. So my interpretation of your entire charter is that it's an ordinance. It has to go through this the ordinance process in your charter. So to pass it and not have an election, you would have to have two readings. The first reading tonight, pass it on first reading, and then have a second reading, which is the public hearing, and then pass that at the second reading. And then you would basically put it into effect. You wouldn't have a special election. Your other option is to not pass it on first reading tonight, which is an automatic mean it doesn't go to a second. That would basically then put it to an election, as Councilmember Shada described. Or you could pass it tonight, have a public hearing on it at your second reading, like you always do for ordinances, and then you could either pass or not pass it on your second reading. If you didn't pass it on your second reading, it would have the same effect. It would basically go to a special election. And I guess you have another option, which would be to do nothing and take no action. And then after 30 days, it would be automatically have to be set for a special election.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. I think that was helpful.
How many days would that be, Mr. Parker, on the last option if we did nothing?
30 days from the date of the sufficiency determination, which, Judy, I'm not sure exactly what date that was.
That was September 2nd of
So to clarify that, if we did nothing, then we would have to have a special election October 2nd? Is that what you're saying?
No, it would basically automatically need to be set for one, because you would not have passed it within the 30-day window, and then it would be set with between 60 and 150 days.
So doing nothing means it automatically passes?
It means it goes to a special election.
Okay, so it automatically.
You have 30 days to take it. Yeah.
Okay, so what I was asking more precisely is, if we did nothing tonight, or if we essentially postponed it indefinitely, what would that trigger in terms of the timing?
Yeah, so you basically, I want to just try and get the nuances here, is that you have 30 days to pass it, and 30 days from the date you determine sufficiency, so that would be September 2nd. So then if you did nothing tonight, you would basically have, I think that 30-day window would still be in effect. So, you could be, maybe council changes your mind within those 30 days and you want to reconsider that decision. You have 30 days from the 2nd, which I guess is October 2nd, I think. And then it would have to, if you didn't do anything then, it has to be set for a special election. I think if you decided not to pass it on first reading, you could basically take the position that you're not going to pass it at all, and you could set it for a special election. And the special election has to occur 60 days, between 60 days and 150 days, and I want to make sure I have the actual correct trigger from when that runs from, because it's a little bit confusing because your charter is silent on that, and you have to go to the statute then. So it would basically have to be 60 days from September 2nd, or 150 days from September 2nd is when the election would have to be held, within that window.
I checked on that window earlier today, and I got the range between November the 2nd and January the 31st.
That sounds about right.
January, what was it?
January 31st.
January 31st.
No, November 2nd to January
And that's
31st.
the window you,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, so I think I counted it okay. Okay, thanks, Mr. Parker. John, did
Yeah,
that?
I just wanted to clarify kind of all the options that could be before us, since essentially this is not a council-initiated or a staff-initiated ordinance. It's essentially a particular interest group that collected the signatures and has therefore got it before us. So thank you.
Thank you. And perhaps for the benefit of the audience, I can kind of explain how this would change things. The ordinance that they have submitted would modify our existing ordinance such that there could be 3 medical marijuana centers, and that they could be located in the portion of the commercial zone district located no more than 150 feet south of US Highway 24 within the city limits, so long as such medical marijuana center or retail marijuana store provides at least 100 parking places for its customers and business invitees. Okay. Oops. I'm sorry, Julie, sorry.
This is a question for Jeff Parker. So if council decides this evening to go forward with first reading, I guess we have to vote on that, it sounds like. Then in that event, even though we usually reserve public comment for following second reading, if for some reason we vote to allow public comment tonight, then is it lawful for presenters to present stuff that was not in the packet, i.e. PowerPoint presentation that we got this afternoon? Is there a problem with that? Coming in tonight with lack of notice?
This is legislation, and so, legislation, as long as you follow your first and second reading procedures in your charter, really anybody can present anything they want within reason that city council decides to allow, relating to the issue. So it's not like a quasi-judicial determination. So as long as you provide the right notices, then you can present whatever they feel like.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Shada?
I guess just sort of a little procedural question. Most of the time when we have a first reading, oftentimes there is, whoever did create the ordinance is given an opportunity to introduce it. So I think just the problem with it is that I think from the standpoint of public participation, I have not, I'm only operating from what's in the packet, okay? And so I think that would be very difficult for the public to follow along, given our camera position and how it would look in terms of the PowerPoint presentation. So I just think we need to keep that in mind. If we allow that to happen, we're sort of cutting, people who are watching this on streaming from seeing the presentation.
No, I think that's a good point. And our typical approach is that before we entertain an ordinance at a regular meeting, we'll discuss it at a work session, and we'll have the opportunity to go over the mechanics and the intent of that. And frequently, the ordinances are prepared by city staff, and that comes from direction. So it's not a quick process. To sort of have this dumped in our laps is a bit foreign to us, and that's kind of why I'd like to get a sense of what council's pleasure is. With that, yeah, Mayor Pro Tem.
I have what might be a very technical question, or that could be very complicate the language that was provided, or it could be nothing, and Jeff may be able to answer, somebody else might be able to. It says no more than 150 feet south of US Highway 24 within the city limits, so long as such marijuana centers or retail marijuana stores provides at least 100 parking spaces. My question is, US Highway 24, I know what they think it is, and that's the bypass. But doesn't US 24 business, wouldn't that also count? So it could end up in our downtown commercial section, south of that Highway 24?
So my answer is, a lot of these initiated ordinances, whether they're at a state level or a municipal level, require some significant interpretation by the governing body to basically effectuate what they think was the intent of the ordinance, and it can get tricky. And so I think that if the city council does its best to interpret the ordinance as it thought the, I guess, proponents, although the intent of the proponents isn't always what matters, it's the language of the ordinance, and the people who vote on it, their intent matters too. But I think my quick answer is it has to be a reasonable interpretation of what you believe the ordinance does. And so, I think that you interpret it the way that you think you said everybody believes it was supposed to apply. But ultimately, if somebody wanted to challenge that, it would be a court would have to decide what that language meant. And but I think you would basically be charged with trying to give it your best interpretation as a first step.
And quite honestly, I didn't know what it was until I read the PowerPoint briefing that came in this afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, when courts interpret language like this, they generally look at the language itself first, and then they try to, and they can't figure it out, they go to other evidence. So that might be relevant evidence, but I think that only comes in if somebody challenges what you're doing. So hopefully you could provide the right interpretation that everybody seems to think is appropriate, and then that's the best you can do.
Thank
You
you.
didn't draft it.
I'm sorry, Jeff, did you have something more? Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, sorry. It's difficult because you didn't draft it. You didn't have staff work on it. You don't have your own evidence. You have to deal with what's given to you, unfortunately.
Right. Natalie, think you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say that they do explain what the commercial zone district is in the initial ordinance that we passed 8 years ago or whatever. So even though the language says north and east of US Highway 24, it does also say the commercial district, the commercial zone district, which is laid out very specifically in the original city ordinance. At least that's how I read it. So I don't think there's confusion, actually. I think it works out okay. Okay.
Yeah, I guess, so,
I read it the other way around. Actually, the way I read it is it does allow it on US 24, which is Manitou Avenue.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that's how I would interpret it too. I'd be afraid that someone would, depends, I suppose, on where you own your real estate. If you're just south of Highway 24, the bypass, or the, Manitou Avenue. Sorry, John?
I have a clarifying question for Mr. Parker. Jeff, you said that what I believe is before us is this ordinance. Is a PowerPoint presentation something that can modify our interpretation of an ordinance? And is that the only thing that could modify that? And did you say that, or did I misunderstand you?
Sorry, I probably didn't make it really clear. So you look at the language of the ordinance first to try to interpret what it actually does and what it means. And then if you can't figure out by just the language alone, the general rule is that you start to look at extrinsic evidence, like what else might be relevant. And then, perhaps a PowerPoint presentation from the proponents of the actual ordinance might be relevant to help you interpret what the ordinance intended. But it certainly wouldn't be a part of the ordinance or change the ordinance. And there may be other types of evidence that might be relevant. But it's really difficult in situations like this because not only is the people who drafted it, is their intent important, the intent of everybody who voted on it and what they thought it meant might be important too. And so it's difficult with these kinds of initiatives. So my short answer is that it could be helpful, but it wouldn't, quote, modify it. It would just be maybe used as one factor in interpreting it.
Thank you. Councilor Wolf?
You were looking at me like you were trying to decide what my name is.
I'm sorry, I was out in the sun today. My eyes are kind of
you're
blurry.
like staring at me?
I'm sorry.
Still here. No, that's fine.
I'm sorry.
Hey, what the heck was I going to say? Oh, I think it would be helpful if we could hire a professional. I don't know how expensive this would be, but someone, and I guess it would be a surveyor, but I don't know, to look at the language in this ordinance proposal and give us a very precise map, because, am I correct, Jeff, that the extrinsic evidence, which is what they call it, the PowerPoint and all those things, that would not be admissible unless, if it went to court, unless the court first finds that the ordinance is in fact ambiguous. And if it's not ambiguous, they don't look at any of that other stuff. And you never know if the judge is going to think it's ambiguous or not. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So it's not a slam dunk that the PowerPoint would be able to be shown to the judge if this goes to court. We could say, oh, it's so ambiguous. We know what we meant. Here's the PowerPoint. The judge is like, I'm not going to look at that because I don't think it's ambiguous. Highway 24 is Highway 24. You all should know your maps, period. So that's my only comment.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I'll jump right in and say I would prefer to let this go to the vote. I have no interest in council approving this ordinance as it's been presented.
Thank you, and I believe Councilor Chandler was next.
Thank you. I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Fortune. I oppose, I really feel that the voting residents of Manitou need to deal with this, and council is aware, and we are very transparent, and we are very fiscally responsible that this carries a $17,000 price tag for a special election, but I still feel, I just support that we need to let this go to a special election.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Wolf?
I have a slightly different take on it, although this is likely going to end up before the voters. Before they vote, we may be able to shed some light on the nuances like Mayor Pro Tem just mentioned, as well as others, if we in fact are willing to at least dig a little bit into what is being proposed. So for example, if in fact we decide, yeah, let's see a real map, let's like really see where this language lands the potential locations, we can still vote at that point that we don't even want to have a first reading or not, but I think it would be beneficial to the public if we could help illuminate some of these issues before we just say, oh, forget it, let the voters decide. So that's why I'm not saying I'm a proponent of this, but I think we should at least take a look a little deeper at what's being proposed. And I don't mean by looking at their PowerPoint, I mean looking at a map that we can rely on, and then go from there and have that addressed next Tuesday.
Thank you, Councilor Wolf. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that is in any way our responsibility to do. We are bound by the process to do exactly what, put on the ballot exactly what the petitioners got signed. And it's up to the petitioner and the advocates either way to educate the public. We are out of it at that point.
I guess
is
it's
my
a-
understanding, and Jeff, you can correct me on that. But I think we should, I don't think it's our responsibility to clarify anything.
I agree, it's not our responsibility in a legal way, but ethically, I think it's appropriate that we give our residents an opportunity to see on a map what this is really proposing and where is it. And if you prefer to keep them in the dark and see if Emerald Fields wants to educate them about that, which they probably won't, that's fine. But I think we owe it to our citizens ethically, not as some legal responsibility that Jeff, would say, that we look into it and take a look at where the heck is this. But, I respect your position, but I just would like the public to have more information. And I think that it is our responsibility ethically to help them know what they're voting on.
Thank you, Councilor Wolf. Mr. Shada?
I guess I'm reluctant not to go through the process. Number one, our charter provided a way for citizens to put an initiative before us. I think we ought to at least respect that process and go through a first and second reading. I do believe that the city attorney, my interpretation of what Mr. Parker said, and maybe he needs to jump in, or Judy wave wildly or whatever, if I go off course on this, is that it sounds like, given that we will be the final implementing body, if this would pass through whatever mechanism, okay, it seems like we ought to go through the process in figuring out what we think, how we would basically implement this. And one of the things that is open, that is the big bugaboo in this thing is, I hear things in the community that say it is constrained to only a particular possible piece of property on Higginbotham Flats, okay? I do not read this ordinance that way, okay? I read this ordinance as saying US 24 highway, which I believe would be Manitou Avenue and US 24. And if you look at the boundaries of that 150 feet, that casts a huge, huge shadow, notwithstanding all the other little conditions of 100 parking places and things like that, as to where this could kind of pop up in the community. And so I do believe we have to move down that pike. This would normally be something that when we would create an ordinance, we would ask staff or the initiator of it to help clarify that language and get that straight. And that's not always, councils don't always get that right. But we have a process that gets it about 95% right, 90, you know what I mean, percent right. This is a case here where I think it would really help us and the public in the process to understand what this would be, because we would be the body, as Mr. Parker said, implementing this. So we better decide from the get-go, as opposed to January 31st, if we would have a special election and then a few days later find out that it passed, how we're going to implement it. Seems like to me we ought to at least go through that process right now. I know it's something that we don't want to do because this isn't our ordinance, but I do think it would be, I think it would be useful.
Thank you. Councilor Chandler, did you want to say something? Okay. I think you've got some good points there, John. I've got a little bit different perspective on this, and it doesn't necessarily mean we're in opposition. But in my mind, the purpose of an initiative, the highest and best use of the initiative, is to ensure that the citizens have redress against the government. If they don't like the way we're doing things, if they don't feel we're responsive, they can override us by the initiative process. I think that's basically to protect the citizens. As I look at this, it's pretty hard for me not to imagine that this is a singular individual or group of individuals who basically want to create their own franchise, to create a third and only a third marijuana business at a particular location, and that they want essentially to use the law and the initiative process to feather their own nest. That's a little suspicious, I suppose. But I see it that way. So I think in the long run, I would like this to go to the vote of the people. I think the point that John and Julie, that you both make, is if we're going to put it in front of the people, we want them to have good, accurate information. So I could see a process whereby we take the next 30 days, get as much data as we can, so we get as clean a picture as we have. We can't touch the wording in the ordinance, but we can see what we think it means, and then I would see putting it to a vote of the people. That's my preference. Julie.
Would you be open to doing everything you just said with the change that once we get the information submitted to us, which I presume would be by next Tuesday, whenever, within the 30-day period, before October 2nd, clearly, then we can decide if we can vote on whether we want to put it to first reading and have the public know how we vote versus just sending it straight to the public. In other words, we can make that decision perhaps after we have a little more information. There's no need to make it tonight. That would be my only tweak, if you would, to borrow Roy's favorite word.
Okay.
That would be my only change to what you just said.
Yeah, I think I'd be agreeable to that. If we could, so I think if, for instance, we take no action tonight except to direct staff to try and get the information together. We're on a kind of a time window, but if we could get that back, then we'd be able to have more facts in front of us, and we could decide then what we want to do.
And the information that you're referring to specifically is a map or something to show us precisely where these words lay on a map? That's the information I would hope to get.
Yeah, that's what I'd be looking for too. And I
Okay.
think, John, that's what you were sort of angling towards? Is that true? Okay. Julie, are you?
Can I make
okay.
one other comment?
Yeah, okay, John, you've got the floor now.
If Jeff is saying the time period is September 2nd to October 2nd, we are really on a time clock here. Because it sounds like to me, we'll have to actually schedule a special meeting to have second reading. If it goes to second reading, okay?
Yeah, you're right. And in fact, October 2nd, that's a Saturday. That's when we're having our day-long budget retreat.
Exactly.
So,
So it doesn't, so I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't fall conveniently on our legislative calendar in terms of what our normal council meetings are. So it sounds like to me that, so I just wanted to clarify kind of looking at the September calendar where we are.
Yeah, I wanted to point that out to you. Do you mind if I just say something there? Yeah, so exactly as Councilmember Shada pointed out, is that because this clock is ticking, your charter, if you do a second reading, it can only be passed no less than 7 days after publication, after first reading. So it's super tight, and we got to get this published. If you go past the first reading, we got to get it published, and we got to get the hearing set forth in 7 days after publication. And so I can talk to Judy about publishing and how we can get that done. It may have to be published somewhere else, which we can do that. And then the second point I had is that your charter requires that you either pass the ordinance or set it for a special election. So I may have not been perfectly clear when I first spoke, is that when you have it set for your second reading, if you do go to there, you would basically have to have the ordinance ready to be passed, which is nothing you can do. You're passing what they presented, or you'd have to have a resolution calling for a special election, which I could certainly prepare. And so you're supposed to do one or the other under your charter. So you'll be making at least a decision to pass it or to set it for a special election on your second reading if you do that.
okay, thanks, Jeff. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thanks.
Hey, Jeff, another question. If this were to go to the voters and the voters approved it, we could never change that language again unless it goes back to the voters. Is that correct?
That's right. That's what your charter says.
So another issue I want to bring up to council is that, not aside from the technicalities of this, to me, just on a practical standpoint, what we have has been working very well, I think, in my opinion. And I think to add a third license in the city is completely unnecessary.
Okay. Thank you. Denise?
Jeff, I just want to clarify, if this passes, it still has to go through a CUP process, correct?
I have to read the ordinance more carefully, but I think you're correct. Basically, this just provides a permissible location
Right.
for it. It doesn't actually, exempt it from any of the other provisions that are required for such a facility. So I believe that's correct. I haven't really thought that through, but I'm pretty confident that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Wouldn't they have to follow all the state regs, all the same statutes that the other marijuana stores have to follow, all of those conditions? I mean, like, if we put a condition on there that you can only work between 1 and 1:30 every day, and those are your only hours of operation, we'd be, determined to be undoing the will of the voters, and that wouldn't be allowed. I mean, requirement-wise, in terms of CUP, don't we just have to impose, aren't we limited to impose on them only what the state requires, or can we come up with some crazy additional stuff?
Well, no, the state requirements are basically a licensing scheme, so it's what you look at when you issue the business license. But the city also includes the conditional use process. That is, like for any other land use, they have to still meet those requirements as well, and those generally, the general requirement for that is that it's compatible with the neighborhood. And then you can impose conditions that are reasonably related to mitigating that if you want to approve it, or you can deny it still. So you'd still have an opportunity to consider it like any other application.
So does that mean the voters could vote yes, and then we don't allow it because of the CUP? Is that what you're saying?
Yep, that's possible.
Oh, I had no idea. Okay, well, that was a really good question, Denise. I had no idea. It seems kind of counterintuitive to me.
The other thing I do want to mention is your standards that you have on the current marijuana stores are different than the state standards. So you can do that. You can say you're only going to operate certain times or whatever that may be, because you're a home rule. So you do have the authority to do such.
And would we be required to treat all the marijuana stores similarly? Otherwise, we could get sued, Jeff, probably, unless we have a good
Well,
excuse.
I guess it would depend. Yeah, the way I look at the conditional use process is that it's sort of independent and it's sort of location dependent. So, you can't just make things up because you want to thwart the will of the voters. There's a certain point you're going to, where your requirements won't be reasonably related to the conditional use process. But if you can justify it within reason, based on the location that's being chosen, like certain things, maybe a location is more exposed and therefore you want to limit lighting, or maybe it's near a residential neighborhood and therefore you want to change the hours. I mean, if you can, just because it's the same kind of business, it's also location dependent. So you can have different provisions for different businesses that are the same kind of business based on their location. So I think, but you couldn't just make up something because you didn't like the owner or because you wanted to, thwart the business. It has to be related to your conditional use criteria.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I'll jump in again, and I'll make a motion to submit ordinance number 1121 to the electors for vote at a special election.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Bremer, so we have 5 in favor. All opposed, say nay. Okay, thank you. So motion passes. So the action of City Council is to move this to the voters. It would seem to me that the concerns that were voiced about trying to determine what areas would actually be affected and thus, provide that information to the voters, I think we could still do that. So in the interest of timing, I guess we can try and get that in some reasonable amount of time.
Well, in that case, do we have to make a motion to ask staff to come back with a map by a certain date or something like that so we can at least see?
We could do it as a motion, but I think we could simply direct staff to do that, trying to be considerate of their schedule. I guess maybe the other question is, when do we want to have the election? If we can push the election out, say closer to the 150-day limit, that gives staff a little more time. So maybe we should discuss when the election could be. And Judy, I would look to you if you have some general thoughts on that, or Mr. Parker.
I'll make one quick comment. Is that I'll bring back to you a resolution setting this matter for a special election. You have to approve that resolution. But if you want to provide some guidance tonight regarding when that should be, or if you want to think about it further for your next meeting,
Okay. I'm hearing suggestions that we consider the details in a work session.
Mr. Parker, do we not have to act by resolution before October 2nd?
Yes, you do.
So this
I
didn't
would
do
think,
much tonight in terms of just saying we were going to do it. So tonight, we had to actually pick a election day within that window for us to be, otherwise we're going to have a special meeting.
Yeah, so you still need to, I basically need to set it for a special one. So I think we could do it in 2 ways. You could pick a date for the election tonight, or you still have to pass a resolution anyways. That's part of the requirement for setting a special election. Or you could pick that date I thought was, if you have a work session next Tuesday, I could have a resolution ready for you, and you could have just a special meeting as part of your work session on Tuesday, and we could basically have a date selected as part of that resolution on Tuesday. Or you can even do a special meeting on Saturday when you're meeting, and do it on Saturday.
And Jeff, your special meeting on Saturday, you're talking about this Saturday? October 2nd, okay. Okay, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I'm sorry, it's a little difficult for some of us to hear in here. Okay.
John, I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead,
Did you
Julie.
say that October 2nd is the all-day staff retreat?
It's our budget retreat.
Okay.
So, yeah,
I had it on the wrong day on my calendar. I'm glad you clarified.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's, it's a full day right there. But we could have a little special meeting at that time, I guess. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, would you
Yeah,
make that statement?
Yes, I would recommend that we have a special meeting next Tuesday in order to pass the resolution so that we don't get into any trouble with dates. Or, yeah.
Okay, how does council feel about that? I see a couple nods. Mr. Shada? Okay. Julie? Okay, I don't either, so it looks like, Mr. Bremner? The thought here we're entertaining is that if for next week, although it's a work session, we would schedule a special meeting at the beginning of that session so that we could address this topic, and it shouldn't take too long, but we'd get it done. Are you in favor? Are you okay with that?
I'm okay with it, but I'll be in the air flying.
Okay, we appreciate that.
Mayor, would we be amending the time that the meeting starts, or would we still start at 6? Or are you proposing 5:30?
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. We could start, maybe we'd start at 5:30. It depends. For a lot of us, that difference isn't a big deal. But Julie, you're working. You want to check your calendar to see if we could start at 5:30 and do the special meeting at 5:30? Okay, you think would that work for everybody else? Okay, so then our plan would be for next week to convene at 5:30 with a special meeting so that we could act on this marijuana issue, and then at 6 o'clock we'll have our joint session with the Planning Commission to go over the zoning stuff.
If I could
Mayor?
suggest one more thing, that Judy and Jeff meet to discuss a recommended date to include in that resolution. We can still change it next Tuesday, but I would definitely like your input as to what that date makes sense.
And if staff could basically come up with a map for us at some point showing what areas would be affected so that we could provide that to the voters. And I don't...
So I'm confused of what you're asking. So you want a map for up on Higginbotham Flats? Is that what you're wanting, or what are you needing?
No, I think it would be our best guess at what areas in town would be qualified to be a host for a third marijuana business under this proposal. So I think that would be something the planning department would have to do. And I guess I would ask you to think about how much time you'd need to get that done. Yeah, no, we wouldn't need that by Tuesday. We just need it, before the election. Yeah, I mean, I think we'd want it well before the election so people would have the opportunity to think it over.
Okay.
Okay. Does council feel that's a reasonable course of action? Okay. Mr. Parker, I think you're on board with that, but it'd be good to double check.
Yep, no, that sounds reasonable for sure.
Okay, so all right, and Judy, you're okay with that? Okay, so we'll have a special meeting at 5, can be starting at 5:30 next Tuesday, and we'll address the matter then. Okay, thank you. Okay, I think that takes care of that issue for tonight at least. Councilor Chandler?
Dr. Domain is here,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I wasn't sure if we wanted to amend the agenda to go back to the,
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just was asking Mayor,
Yeah.
Dr. Domain is here now, and we had an amended agenda to proceed, and I'm just
No,
asking if,
yeah, my plan was to, when she got here, that we could go ahead and bring the matter forward. So now that we finished the marijuana item, let's go ahead and do the District 14 presentation. So Dr. Domain, you come forward.
Is Jeff still on the line, or is he gone? He's gone. Oh, is it appropriate for any of us to make any position or comments, good or bad, about this because we're in our individual capacity, but we're sitting here as council? Am I correct that we're not supposed to really say anything? We're just supposed to listen. We can't say, oh, that's great, I hope it passes, or I think that's terrible, how can we afford that, whatever. We're just supposed to be quiet, am I right?
Well, I think this is principally an informational session, so it would seem to me like we could ask questions, clarifying questions.
I didn't mean to say we can't ask questions. I meant to say we're not supposed to comment, good or bad. We're not taking a position as a body on this.
Yes, I believe that's
Issue.
correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. That's a good point. Thank you. Very good then.
Thank you all. Oh, sorry, Mayor Graham. Thanks for moving us around. We had a different board meeting just prior, so thank you. Do I just push this button forward? Yes. Let's see. Yeah.
Is it on?
Oh, that's good. Let's see. Nope. Thank you. Good question. Thanks. Got it. Perfect. And beside me here is Susie Thompson. She's our Chief Financial Officer. Same, thank you, Julie, for also mentioning that. We are here just present factual information and excited to be here for this opportunity. So we are going to just let you, you have the packet there. We'll go through these slides, and then I know, thanks, Mayor Graham, for sending a couple of items to us before. Really appreciate that. So many of you may already know that next year we turn 150 years old as a community, which is very exciting. And then also Manitou Springs Elementary School turns 100 years old. And that's a milestone that every community should be excited to celebrate. In addition to that, every 15 to 20 years, schools, districts typically reinvest in their schools. So the last time we've recently paid off this bond debt was in November 2020. So good stewards of these taxpayer dollars and paying off that debt. And actually there were a little bit of savings there of about, what is it, $39,000, $43,000 there. So we managed that as money as well. So some of the work that we've done over this time frame is actually beyond 6 months. It's actually started 2 years ago with the District Accountability Committee. And on that committee, we are responsible for having a capital improvement committee. And that's composed of different stakeholders, staff, parents, administration, and this is a requirement from Colorado Department of Education. So in that district accountability group, we began to really dive into our facilities. We spent an entire year as a subcommittee really diving into that work. Did school tours, got some feedback from our stakeholders, and from there, the District Accountability Committee recommended to the Board of Education that we invest in developing a master plan. Prior to that, the school district did not have a current master facility plan, and we thought that was important to make sure that the next moves, the important moves that we have, we're making those wisely. In addition to that our yearly allocations for capital improvement were also used wisely. So that was an important process that took about 6 months. We went through an RFP process for a master facility planner, and that was awarded to Trainer HL Architects, and that was a great process for us. We had about 14 architects who bid for that, and it was an exciting project for architects in the area. From there, we engaged in the 6-month master planning process, and that was all of last year, and it was collaborative. We had visioning teams, we had executive team, we had our school board, we had staff, students, and community members all engaged in this process. So really looking at our current facilities, which also required that the Colorado Department of Education came in and did a facilities assessment. So they went to every single building, every campus, and built our bus barn, the baseball field, you name it, and they really looked at all of those conditions. From there, we received, I don't know, approximately 800-page report saying, you know, this flooring has this much life on it, the track on the field, the covering has this many years left on it. So we could really begin to flush out what the priority improvements would be moving forward. So this document was created, and really the work of a lot of collaboration, feedback, and also, if you're interested, there's a huge text part of it that is connected to the historical aspects of Manitou Springs School District, from Ute Pass to our other three schools. And I highly encourage, I think it's a rich history. We've dropped off a copy of it at the Heritage Center so they can have an architectural, they can have this in their archives. So that is also posted on our website. So this also was required for us to apply for the Building Excellent Schools Best Grant. And I'll talk about that in a little bit right now, actually. We applied for it. We received a $9 million Best Grant. And these monies are essentially matching grants. So our match is high, it's 65%. So we have to match at $16.5 million. You know, oftentimes in schools we get questions, well, don't you get money from marijuana? We don't. We really don't until you apply for a BEST grant. So this is the first time the school district has applied for a BEST grant. We were awarded two, one for new roofs at Manitou Springs Elementary School and Ute Pass Elementary School. And then those are also including secure vestibules in both of those schools. All of our schools right now, we do not have secure vestibules. You walk directly into the school. And so I don't like to share too much about that because that is some of the safety things, but it is something that we know to be true, and that came out of our assessments. The other component of that is a modification and a new build for our middle school, high school campus. And I'll talk a little bit more about that just because it's a little bit more complicated in the design. So again, in '88, we had a bond. In 2002, we had a bond. 2002 was when the Silk building was built, and there were some other renovations throughout the school district. The Silk is our shared integrated learning center, so I think many of you have been there. I think all of you have been there, but yeah, just up on the hill there. So this also addressed some of our maintenance concerns and deferred maintenance, staff and security issues that we'll talk about, and then just essentially just making sure our schools are ready for everything that our children deserve in the future, and including that asterisk down there around ADA projects. And I can talk about that right now. Let's see, last year in the middle of COVID, we received OCR, Office of Civil Rights audit. And it's not because we did anything wrong, it's because we received federal dollars for career technical education. And through that OCR audit, we learned of all of the ADA inadequacies that we currently have. And those were just at our high school and the Silk. This audit didn't go to any of our other campuses. So this was an important part of our process moving forward. But in this green box, I think it's important to note that in 11 years ago, when the recession happened, school districts started to lose money from the state. And the way the state determined this to be is called the budget stabilization factor. So basically, the state owed money that we did not receive. That equated to approximately $16 million over the last 11 years. If we look at our deferred maintenance, it equates almost to about $16 million. So not to say that that's one-to-one, but we're just saying there's a significant allocation over the last 11 years that the school district, and not just Manitou, that's across the entire state. So all school districts have experienced that budget stabilization factor. Here's just some conditions just in terms of the buildings, and a lot of this came from some of the feedback from students and staff meetings. You know, just the state of our buildings, those renovations haven't happened in several decades. And sometimes even the 2002 bond didn't touch necessarily parts of the building. So in that picture on the left, those are one of those sinks where you have to use your foot to access the water. And so children not all children can access that type of hand washing station. You'll see, just on the top right, there's some roof repairs that need to happen at Ute Pass Elementary School. It is a facility where it just turned 50 years 2 years ago, and this roof has met its end of life. And we know that because of that process that happened by CDE or through that facilities assessment, really saying it's at the end of life. It's done its job, and now it's time. So, and then just general conditions of the schools, making sure that we're current and moving forward there. So the left building there that you see with the circle there, that's our buildings and grounds. And we share that because that's in the parking lot of the high school next to the track. So if you're familiar with that space, years ago, we learned through this process that was, are there any alumni in here? That was the old driver's ed building. And so just a historical tidbit there. It is buildings and grounds. There's no running water and there's no plumbing for toiletry in there. So those folks have to head into different spaces for their conditions. There's also lots of storage containers in the parking lot there. Really creates some conditions of safety and concern around the way the parking lot is configured. So all of these things led into are part of the master facility plan. That picture on the right is our athletic field, soccer and football. And this is one of those access areas that is not accessible for anyone in a wheelchair. So visitors they don't have a spot to sit over there in that area. So there's a ton of different pictures. I won't go into those. One of the projects within this option is renovating the auditorium. So 100 years old. You can see there are cracks in the wall. There's roof leaks in the ceiling. There's asbestos underneath the carpet, and the chairs are not accessible by all. Additionally, there's some architectural and historical features that need to be renovated and revised, and to make sure we're preserving the space. That renovation, all of these. So if you said, what does this cost? All of this is on the district's website. It's been there for a long time, but you can drill down exactly and see what each of these projects cost. So just the package itself includes these four aspects, and I'm going to just spend a little bit of time. You can see it at Manitou Springs High School. This is about $9 million, and this duration of this $43 million is over 25 years. So that amortization is over 25 years. There have been some questions, is it 20 or 25? It's 25. So $9 million at the high school. Some of the questions I can share with you are that throughout this process, our board, our visioning team, and others, really looked at 3 different packages here. And that was a lot of deliberation, a lot of conversations, and really making sure that for this package, that it was going to be comprehensive for the next 25 years and not needing to go back in 5 years or 10 years, saying this was a robust opportunity for the school district, and especially in light of that BEST grant. So here's the different aspects that would touch Manitou Springs High School. I won't go into all of those, but there are some cost savings that end up happening, in, for example, in LED lighting and other electrical system upgrades. So when you think about cost savings, those are important to us. And then the middle school, there's some questions, of course, that come up around the middle school. And I'm gonna share it with you exactly, because some of the questions are related to 6th graders intermingling with 12th graders, let's say. So we can share some information there. The 2 schools will still have independent and different schedules. So as they do now, our 6th through 8th grade, they have a separate bell schedule. They are in the building separately. Sometimes, in the Silk, there's very often that our students are in the building 6th through 12th grade. They've been in the same building for over 20 years. So that doesn't change. Also, they still have their own community identity. So they still have their staff at the middle school and their staff at the high school. There's two different levels of work there. And then some of the proposed construction here is just to kind of orient. I actually think the next, this one is a little bit, I think a little bit oriented in a way that is you can see it a little bit differently. So kind of looking at the high school, the larger building there, what you'll see is that really the structure of the high school remains predominantly the same. But what does peel away is there's a portion of the building that needs to be removed so that we can extend the bus lane and making sure that fire and buses and cars can come through here. This buildings and grounds building in the parking lot would go away, and I'll tell you where that'll go. That allows us to reconfigure the parking because one of the biggest questions, right, is are we going to lose parking in there? And I can tell you that. In this design, we do lose about 14 to 15 spots, but one of the solutions that the group developed was that this upper activity field up here, this is where our middle schoolers play. It's a dirt patch up there. It's been that way. The middle schoolers currently do not have a play space. They haven't had one. The building was finished in '75, and they still do not have a play space up there or outdoor space besides this dirt area. So a portion of this would be converted into overflow parking, not a huge bit of it, because we really want to preserve this for outdoor classroom spaces, geodesic domes, those types of learning experiences for kids. Also, in this design, what would happen is that this red building would be the new building. And then the silk, the administration that is currently in the silk in this area, we would all head down to the middle school. And so that middle school would be repurposed for some all of our administrative offices, buildings and grounds, some community spaces, for example, Partners for Healthy Choices. Right now, Partners for Healthy Choices is partially housed in the elementary school and partially housed in the high school. So there would be one space where folks who needed access to the clothing closet or the food pantry could go to have their needs met. Also in that space, our students would still continue to be able to use that gym and also have lunch there. So it's still a building that is usable and accessible. Some of the questions might be, well, what's wrong? Why? Why is that the case? What we found in the master facility plan is that, and we knew this, in '75 when the building was built, about 4 years later, it sunk. It was built on a sort of a boggy area. In fact, lots of folks who've participated in our community engagement meetings have shared that same information with us. So it was built in '75. It started to sink. It was shored back up. It's still moving, and you can see definitive cracks. You can see things that look like a ramp, but they're not. It's the building moving. Through the assessment, the civil engineers, the building is safe. It's not going to fall down. And so when we think about that building, as with the others, would need about $8 to $9 million. The idea is that moving that into new spaces for middle school students, and this is really a significant portion of that BEST grant. So the BEST grant and the matching funds for that. That does allow for robotics to move into this space and other partners that can be useful using this space, including any aspects of the city. Susie, did I miss anything in that design? Okay. There's a lot to that, and I'd just like to take a little bit of time there. So, and this would be a bridge from here to there, and this would be a media center, a shared media center. One of the things the visioning team did, several of us went to see some different schools, Buena Vista, Salida, of similar size. And what we did see was Buena Vista had a 612 campus, and they also had a shared media center. So just seeing those visuals there. One other thing I'll add is that the football and soccer field would become turfed. That would allow more access to our community all year round. Currently, right now, because it is grass, it takes a significant amount of support from our buildings and grounds team to keep it in great shape, but it's also not able to be used often. So one of the ways we see this is in terms of partnership with the city, possible opportunities for Parks and Rec. And I think that that's exciting, and that it's close, it's walkable, and it's connected to some of those trails and access. So that was some of the work there that came through our visioning team. I'm just going to kind of flip through these. This is the run of the renderings there. So that building on the left would be the new middle school, and then this would be the connector, the media center, and so forth. An interior of the media center. Of course, these are just renderings. This would be engaged with the community through the process. That middle school would continue to be a community asset. A lot of the thinking was also how could we include intergenerational programming. So Manitou Elementary School would also have about $9.3 million, and that includes that auditorium renovation. I can't remember the exact number, but it was close to about $600,000. One of those being, I don't know if you've been in there lately, but if you look to the right, if you're looking at the stage, there are these two big windows. And our understanding is that those were bricked in during the '88 bond. They were just having difficulty getting the room dark enough for performances, so they bricked it in. And so that would be some of the work, and that the historical preservation and restoration would be to bring those back to light, and then you'd have blackout curtains that could be used. These could also be used for community programming and other opportunities, including renovating the downstairs dressing room. So I'm gonna, UPass also received $7 million, and just so you know, I shared the same presentation with the Board of Trustees at UPass for their information purposes. We would turf both of those playgrounds. Right now, the Manitou Springs Elementary School is a GoCo playground, so it's open all the time. This would allow for students to be able to access that turf area all year round, and really there is some safety concerns there. It's currently this loose gravel. Our athletic fields would also be impacted there. I kind of talked about that. Here's the timeline for everyone. So if this were to move forward, then some of this work would begin this summer. So particularly, most likely, some of those outdoor spaces would become available pretty soon after that project. I know a big question is the tax impact, and like I said earlier, we as a board and as a community really wrestled with what's the amount, and so getting to that $43 million, it really is about $13 per month per $100,000 and $52 per month per $100,000 for commercial. Online there is a calculator, and we got some really good feedback during our community engagement process to say, you know, one of the calculators was hard to use. So we adjusted that just to make it more simplified. So I know that this is a question, but that calculator is there, and anyone can see what that rate how it might affect them. Let's see. So some of the questions that have come up around, you know, choice, and we know that our student choice percentage is about 50%. And so one of the things that I want to share with you all is our Board of Education will be planning a community engaged process. So there's some questions around choice in those processes. So we're going to be working on that. So once that happens, we'll be happy to invite you all to participate as citizens, as residents, as community members in your current role when that opportunity comes up. Because I know that is a question that has been happening for a while now. And then here's the several different opportunities there's one that's not showing there, but we have had multiple opportunities for the community to engage in these different presentations. They've been good each time, answering questions, clarifying, and trying to get information there. So people have the information that they need. Again, the timeline is right where we are, is gone through all of these steps, and now we're just in this spot right now. You know, and again, I'm just giving you factual information, and Susie may have some other information to share that I missed.
I don't think you missed anything.
Just push that right there.
No, I don't think that I have anything different that you missed. You know, the $13 a month is our estimate right now. Assessed valuations come out at the end, in November, and so as we do that, we'll know actual numbers, but based off the numbers we have right now, it's $13 a month per $100,000 home.
Thank you. Council, do you have questions or comments? Mayor Tim?
Thanks. Wow, it's very comprehensive, very strategic, a lot of things that are important. I often, and I'm assuming you're presented with a bunch of options as you went through this process. So I often like to think of options in terms of it's, the Cadillac version, the Chevrolet version, or the Volkswagen version. Probably not as accurate in today's car environment, but I was wondering which version this is.
I am like the worst to kind of make that comparison. But what I would say is that this package gets us to that 25 years on that priority list from CDE very, very comprehensively at all 4 of our buildings, including our fields. So when I think about safety and security, but there are some things that are not addressed here. And so we just know that in a master plan, excuse me, in a master plan, for example, our track on if you looked at it, you think it needs to be resurfaced. What needs to happen is some mitigation of rainwater runoff needs to happen, because if we don't address that, we're going to have some bigger issues, not only for us as a school district, but by the folks down the hill from us. So I encourage, if any of you want to come and take a look at these facilities and have that experience, happy to do that. But if you go to the north side of that track, there's a retention wall that we need to address. And so, but if you look at the track, it still has 10 years left on it. So I just say that this is comprehensive in the fact that it gets us to 25 years with a strategic plan for making sure that some of this deferred maintenance, we don't get there again, if that helps, Nancy. Thank you.
So when we did this, when the facility master plan came out, we did a number of things with our board, with different focus groups, and really prioritized things. There's a number of things that are left off of the list because they just weren't high enough priority. We really went through and found what was absolutely necessary to get done.
Thanks.
One of those being, I didn't really speak to it, addressing issues of ADA compliance. It's a big deal. For example, our weights room at our high school is stairs, and no one in a wheelchair can get to that space. It's, when you think about all children having access. So one of the things that we tried to solve in these dilemmas is to make these spaces accessible for all children. And so that bridge, what that bridge allows is for us, elevators are expensive. I was here at your last meeting. Elevators can cost nearly $1 million, or, close there too, depending on how many stops. I've been learning a lot about elevators. But the reality is that what this allows is now if any child can enter into that space. Also up there is our wrestling room and other areas. Our ramps aren't currently ADA compliant throughout the high school, and none of some of our bathrooms are ADA compliant. So when we think about, to Susie's point, this touches every aspect of our school, gets us in a place where we should be for educational programming. For example, preschoolers should have a bathroom. That's a requirement. Currently our bathrooms at Ute Pass Elementary, we don't have it for preschool. So this would get us to that place, but it doesn't touch everything. But it gets us to where there's no ask in 10 years, if that makes sense.
Other questions, comments? I guess not.
All right.
Great. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And again, if any of you would like a tour, you want to come and see a facility, we're happy to do that. We've offered that to anyone, really just so you have information that you might want to have. But really appreciate each of you, and thanks for your time. When the community engagement around choice happens and scheduled, happy to invite you all to that.
Okay, that'd be good. I think there'd be some interest in that.
Great.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very
Council.
much. Okay, council, if there are no objections, I suggest we take a 15-minute break, come back at 8 o'clock, and then we should be able to finish up the meeting in relatively short order. Well, we'll see. Okay. Okay, let's get started again. So the next item is purchasing parcel 74062000008. It's referred to as the ITEL property. And,
I can do just a quick update if you
yeah,
want.
that's fine.
Yeah, we talked about this in executive session, and so all I need, when moving forward, they need a resolution either from city council or from OSAC. City council met before OSAC. We're trying to get this moving quickly, so I just need approval for this resolution so we can continue to move with this.
I move to approve.
I'll
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Is Mr. Bremner available, or? He's gone, okay. All right. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next item, the COVID discussion. COVID-19 discussion and task force report and update. We have Elizabeth and Natalie and Judith, so go ahead and however you want to do your presentation.
And just so you know, I put the presentation together and Elizabeth's kind of translating it, so we'll kind of figure it out.
Sure. There's also, I don't know if I'm able to access our website at all through this part. No, it's okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, if you want to get to that detail, I'm happy to do that. Do you want to go, Natalie, or?
What do you want us to access the?
Oh, okay.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay, sorry. Okay, that's just a recap. We can skip over that guy.
Yep.
Okay, again, goals. I think that was really clear and easy for us to come up with.
Yes.
Keep kids in school, and then determine the data points, and then again, maintain a collaborative spirit as we work through this. Okay, so we kind of decided that we need to kind of maintain these numbers in the back of our heads because this was the data we were presented with when council decided to implement the mask mandate. And so we definitely want to at least get to these numbers at a minimum based on sort of where we were feeling as a council on August 17th. So we're going to continue to kind of revisit those and hang on to those as we make our decisions. Today's data, do you want to share today's data, Judith?
So this would be as of, oh, yeah. So I'm sure you've gotten the memo that the El Paso County Health Department has moved us from orange to orange red as far as hospitalization rates. We currently have an incident rate of 277.9 per 100,000 of the population. We have a positivity rate of 10.06%. And the hospital data, the hospital rate is 8.29%. I don't know that we had that, that we noted that last time or on the 17th when we initiated the mask mandate. But you, obviously, you can see that the numbers are quite a bit more grim than they were. And so we're just, basically, this is, a real wait and see kind of thing. So it's really all about vaccination. I know that the CDC has been discussing a vaccine for children under the age of 12, or 12. So that's on the horizon. And I do know that boosters are being recommended for 65 and older and people with comorbid conditions. And so that's kind of where we are in El Paso County.
One of the things that I shared with you all, was that just last week? I think so. I can't remember now. But that I would share with you all the vaccination rates for students as we've had them. So just because at this point, I think I shared also that CDPHE was going to be opening an opportunity for us to provide the names of all of our students, and they could then check their vaccination status. there's some glitchiness with that system, and so it has to be confidentially sent in a secure way. But internally, I think I also shared that our contact tracer has been going into this system on her own, very time consuming. She's gotten through high school data, which is good for us. 12th grade at this point, and I did share this with our Board of Education last night, 12th grade right now is at 57%. And this does not include, this only includes students who are fully vaccinated. So we know that several have already started the vaccination process. 11th grade is 52, 10th grade is 57, and 9th grade is 50, and overall is 54. I said I would share that with you all. Part of our task force was really, we were talking about the initial data points that we were looking at were hospitalization, positivity rates, and the incidence. So just wanted to share that with you all. And so we're going to continue to look at our middle school data. I can tell you that, from a school side, if you ever want to pull up exactly how many current positives there are in the school, you can go to the website, and I'm happy to show you. It's on the spot where folks have been going for this data for a long time. But anyway, it's where it's COVID updates, and then you'll see incidents. So I can share that, in a day there might be a positive, but some days there might not be, or there might be 2 positives. What we're seeing is that a reduced impact to quarantine. So in those times when there's a positive, it may be only impacting 4 students who might have been in close proximity for some reason. So it's really important, and I think the goal of this group, really keeping kids in schools, has been shown that we're doing that, and I think that's a really great opportunity for us. So just wanted to update you on that. And then yes, to Judith, what you said with Pfizer being approved soon, maybe they said beginning of October for 5 and up. And
Elizabeth, another thing came up too today. Someone spoke during the public comment, and they were asking whether or not there was anyone, what did they, I'm trying to think, what's that? Yeah, but he was talking about having a member of our committee coming from the health department field or health profession, and I just didn't know if you wanted to talk a bit about Jackie and her
sure.
role. Yeah, and her
Yeah.
background.
Jackie is our nurse. She's a registered nurse, school nurse, and she has been also a history of, for I don't know, a decade previous to this position in Teller County and in the health department there. So we have a great resource there. She's one of the reasons we were able to get that governor vaccination for all clinic recently. So we have a very skilled staff in that sense. Our contact tracer has a master's in public health. We have a robust team, and I shared with them also that we meet every day at 2 o'clock, and that's where we're able to really isolate where it might be the case. I can tell you that just that is something that makes Manitou very unique and special, in that we can do that. We can do that and know a lot about what's going on very quickly. We do contact trace all week long, so these meetings also sometimes have to happen on the weekends. But yeah, that team is very skilled. We have a built-in expertise, which is excellent. And is that what you were thinking, Natalie?
And just that Jackie is on our mask task
Yes,
force
she's
as
on
well.
the task force.
So.
Yeah. I also wanted to share that last week I was on a call with the health department and other superintendents, and the health department is also kind of wrestling with this same thing. And I think one of the things I shared with that group is that this iterative process has been helpful, and I highly recommend, if the health department moves to something like this, that it continues to be a collaborative process. So, looking back, and actually I gave them the numbers for our city when we went to mask, and said, this is a number that we're looking at as we move forward. So we're not there as a community, but we just wanted to share that. One of the things that they also recommended, and I'm not saying that right now, but potentially the idea of mask happening when a school is at a positivity rate or a quarantine rate that is really affecting kids being in person. And so that might be some work and something you hear from the health department. I don't know for sure, but we're just trying to basically wrestle with the same kind of discussion, which I think is important. Let's see. And so I think that's where we are. So we're just still working on these. And I think it's been a productive dialogue for sure.
Counselor Chandler?
Dr. Domain, can you speak to the actual incident rate numbers in school, and what is your protocol for enforcing the mask mandate with
Yeah.
students? And is there a correlation with the percentage of students that are wearing masks? And are you seeing any more higher, lower numbers in incident rates?
Yeah, I mean, I think that some of the positivity that we know about is also some transmission that's happening outside of school. And so we can equate it to that, some of those moments. But I think generally speaking, the incident has been low and also managed. One of the things that does happen when both students are masked and or vaccinated, then you don't have to quarantine. So that's what we continue to share. In the event that, let's say, children were riding in a car together and they were unmasked, that might be a time, right? They're not with us, but we're saying you're in the car together unmasked. That's a time you might have to quarantine. And so in terms of the exact incidents, we're not keeping that level of granular of like where the incident happened. So, but I can tell you it's what's the really great aspect is that more kids are staying in school. So from those quarantines.
I'm less concerned about where they're getting it than if they have it. So, because we were discussing that, while we are driven by El Paso County Health Department statistics, if there's a tremendously low incident rate, for example, at the middle school, maybe we need to look at individually looking at what's in the best interest of the school. So I would like to know what the actual incident, how many kids are testing positive, and what are the numbers?
Yeah, I think this is the first time I'm hearing that from our task force. I think that's something that the four of us can really wrestle with, is that, in what context, over what period of time. And so I'm glad that's something we can bring to the task force. Does that sound good? We haven't talked about that before tonight.
Yes, and just so everyone knows, we are meeting on the 27th at 1 o'clock again, so we perhaps we can address that then.
And I think, Judith, too, to everyone, we have begun to keep a 2-week interval of that. We just haven't calculated it, because what's happening, you'll see on our tracker, we just tell you how many currently are positive, right? Because then you can see what's the incident. But we've been keeping that real time, so we can calculate that easily. We just haven't. I think that'll be important. Yeah.
I would just like to consider that as a really important metric on how we look at each school in D14 and make decisions that are in the best interest of the kids. And I think that's just instead of doing an overall blanket of what's happening in El Paso County. So I didn't mean to put you on the hot seat. But
No, you didn't. I understand.
Thanks.
No, that makes sense. I think this is what we can also share with other communities who are trying to figure out these things, same things. You said something else. Oh, I want to let you know about Binax testing, the rapid test. We are closer, nearly out of those home tests, but I received an email tonight that our shipment is on the way. So that's another 197 tests, which is really helpful for our community, because right now, when we're out of those tests, they have to go to the Citadel or they have to go somewhere else. But what's really nice in those quarantine situations, we can just say, here's a test, and it takes out that time frame, the cost, the inconvenience, and they have it right then. I shared the link with Denise. I think that looks like it can be any kind of entity that requests it. So I hopefully that's something that the city can also have access to. As I get those resources, we'll share them with Denise. I think kudos to our families and our staff for everything they're doing to mitigate impact. And that COVID intake form is really very, very important to make sure that this doesn't happen. Oftentimes, we'll learn about a student becoming positive or symptomatic, and the parents are just keeping them at home. And that is that is a great way for us to stay in school. So, anything else?
Any other questions? Natalie, looks like you've got something.
Well, I would just say that, again, we welcome additional questions. You wake up in the middle of the night with an amazing question, just shoot it our way and we'll incorporate it into the project.
Okay, great, thank you. Anyone else? I guess not.
No.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth.
Thanks again, appreciate the partnership.
Yes, we do also. All right, that basically concludes the business for tonight. Aside from a couple of standards, receive or act on council correspondence. Anyone like to start off? Nancy?
Sure. We talked about this once before, but I would like to suggest that on a meeting in the not too distant future that we consider, or that tonight we direct staff to put a 6-month moratorium on memorial naming rights to city properties. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, any objections or discussion? Okay. All right, let's see, I've got a couple things here. We currently have on the tentative agenda list, you may have noticed for October the 26th, the discussion with the COG Railway of the $500,000 that they agreed to spend on transportation hub. And the reason, and that's actually one of those joint work sessions that we have with the Planning Commission. It's there simple because Gary Pearson says he can't be here any other time. We could leave
Can
that
you
on
say the date again? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, October 26th. So it'd be next month, the end of next month.
So that's the joint meeting we have with the Planning Commission to review the proposed.
Right, exactly.
Revisions?
And personally, I'd really like to stay focused, use that meeting to stay focused on the, on the rezoning effort. The conflict there is that Pearson's, he's available then and supposedly no other time. We could, and then there's also a couple other twists on this. There's been interest by at least one council person to have that on the agenda. I've heard from another council person that they would be happy with directing staff to pursue that. Staff's in a position where they don't know what they really should be doing. So I'd like to ask council for some clarification. Do we want to have staff pursue this with Pearson? Do we
No.
want to call him in for a meeting?
No, I can't imagine. We're supposed to set policy. I don't think we're supposed to delegate it to staff.
Okay, so you're saying you want to have a meeting with Gary?
Yeah, I
Yes.
just don't see there's any rush, and I don't want to have it on that day.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, why can't we do it in January? I mean,
that's
we're
good.
not making any plans with Hiawatha right away anyway, so what's the big rush?
Okay, there isn't. Well, in my mind, there isn't, but there might, I got the sense that maybe expectations from some other council members was they wanted to see something happen faster, but I think we can wait. Okay, how about you, Nancy?
Waiting is fine by me. I'm not in a rush.
Okay, I'm not in a rush either. Okay, so we're not really in a hurry, so if council doesn't have any objections, then I guess our direction to staff would be to we'll table it for now and try not to forget it. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention was the letter that I passed out last week, the hard copy, the letter to the employees, the statement there. I did send you an updated version today. It's different in two things. It has a lead paragraph that was asked for, so you can take a look at that. And then also I put signature lines for all of us. And my thought there was if we could come up with something we're all pretty happy with, and we could all sign it, then that would, I think, would send a unified statement to the city employees and to the community at large. That would be my thought. I've heard back from Natalie and from Nancy, so if the others of you would have an opportunity to look at things, again, this is something where we probably don't need to rush, but I don't think we should linger either. So if you you could take a look and get back to me, that'd be fine.
I do have a quick thing, too. I know that last time there were concerns about the memo line, what it stated. What do I want to say? The subject line.
Subject line, okay.
And so I don't know if anyone has any feedback to give John on that as well.
So Natalie, could you say that again?
The subject line that went out last time, I know there were issues with that as well. So it might be worth also asking for feedback on what you would like the subject line to say.
You mean the subject line at the top of the document or in the email?
In the email, when you receive the email and it says subject.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Give me your opinions, but yeah, okay.
Mayor,
Yeah.
it's Judy over here. So I'm just kind of confused because I don't believe we have had an agenda item on this. It sounds like there's quite a bit of discussion
Okay.
about an item that hasn't been agendized.
I'm sorry, yeah, my intent was just do this briefly and catch it at council correspondence, so I think we're done with that, if that's okay.
Well, I wondered if I thought it should be in the packet. I mean, aren't we kind of having an open meeting law violation by weighing in on your paperwork that you want us to comment on that hasn't been in the packet, but
Okay.
we're talking about it here publicly? Or I guess you could read it and ask, I don't know. I thought it should have been noticed up.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess we can make this more formal, but really what I was asking was for some feedback so that we could move this along. Just send your remarks to Judy, and she'll get them to me. And just send them to the city clerk. I mean, you know, it is impossible to write a document by committee, okay? I've written it. If you have things you want to change about it, I'm probably willing to do that, but you're going to have to respond back. And okay, a week from today, noon.
To
Noon a week.
Judy or to you?
To Judy. Send them to Judy a week. They're due to Judy a week from today, so that would be the 28th. Yeah, and if I don't hear from you, I'll assume it's okay, and that we will all be agreeable to sign.
Yeah, and if it doesn't have my signature, you can assume it's not okay with me because I'm not doing this anymore. As I mentioned last week, if there's ever a memo from city council that anyone in the public ever sees, it's not really from me unless I've signed my name. Thank you.
Okay, I understand, and you have the opportunity to comment and make suggestions or criticisms or whatever, so it's your opportunity. Okay, that's all I got.
Just to reiterate, so the deadline is the 28th at what, noon?
At noon to Judy. Yep, thank you. Anybody else have anything? Okay. Yeah, Natalie?
Did you want to talk about the evaluation?
I have to change the floppy disk, so you have to be careful here. I'm like kind of old. I have to get, the 5 1/4-inch floppy. Natalie and I have been working on the city administrator evaluation. We have been looking at lots of other cities and associations and stuff like that. But I do want to say, that because where we're headed, and I guess I want to just real quick, people can individually give us your thoughts on these. We're steering away from a numerical system, okay, and asking people on each one of the rating rows, so to speak, to just document, was the performance exceeded expectations, in the middle, or lacking something? And the reason why I think we went away from this rating thing is a lot of these evaluations we've been looking at are very complicated in terms of weighted schemes and trying to prioritize. We just thought, oh gosh, how in the world do we navigate this with you guys? in terms of getting that weighted thing, much less we couldn't kind of abide by it to begin with. So there's not going to be some numerical kind of score where we're headed with it. Okay. And we're now kind of going through and kind of vetting the questions is the stage we're in. I was, I think, a little astonished about how much time the mayor had spent collating the whole thing. And I think we have a new simplified way of coming up with it. We're also suggesting that we all put our names on our comments and that we discuss them with the names on there. And so we would be taking the evaluation and the administrator would be taking them, and so everybody knows what we're talking about, and we don't have to kind of look at things and go, did I write that, or which one of them was mine, or that type of thing. So that's our quick report. I think we're kind of on target to be done by the end of the month, okay? All right, and present something with you. And so I think we need to talk about that process so that Judy is happy from a process standpoint in terms of having it, you know, on the agenda. Okay?
Thank you.
Does that
Anybody
mean we should put it on the agenda for the end of this month instead of moving on to the next subject? Should we do that? I mean, should we agree to that?
I'm just wondering, should it be a work session, or do you want, I mean, how do you want us to, just because we're ready doesn't mean we need to.
Yeah, I think we should discuss it at a work session. And so I'm thinking that second Tuesday in October would be our next opportunity.
So
And
we will have something ready then.
October 12th.
October,
is what we'll
that
have
would
it
be
on.
great then, yeah. That,
All right, thank you.
great, well, thanks for doing that. That's moving us along. Anybody else? Guess not. Okay, the city administrator's report.
The agenda is to make sure that we're set. I have just a couple of things. Pool, due to staffing, we're going to be cutting some of our hours, so that will be coming out fairly quickly. I think everybody knows that staffing is an issue everywhere, and it is also the case with lifeguards. So we're looking at what we can do, and we'll be announcing that fairly soon. We did get the Animal Crossing signs, and they will be put up over by Shriver here very quickly. So those will be put up. There's going to be a mirror over there off of Washington where you turn really short. So that will be hopefully put up in the next couple of weeks. So we got them in. We just are staffing accordingly and trying to get that done. So I wanted to let you know those things. What I have for direction tonight is to bring back a moratorium that you guys approve for no more, for 6 months regarding naming rights for any city property, et cetera, until we can put something in place. And we do need 6 months. We can't really work on that until 2022 from a staffing perspective. I already sent an email asking that we put maybe February timeframe, the 500,000 for the COG. So it will be February, March timeframe to see if we can get that when Gary's available. And then I also have, you asked us to come back with the proposals of all the places that the marijuanas might be able to be based on the ordinance, which is going to take us some time to work with Jeff Parker to make sure we have it, and then what's commercial. So we'll get that back to you as quickly as we can. I would guess that's probably a month out before we can do that. So that is what I have from tonight. If I've missed something, please let me know.
Great, thanks Denise. Yeah, okay, Julie?
It was my understanding that we, council wanted either, a surveyor or somebody who understands meets and bounds and 20 to the left and 100 to the right. I don't know that that's a Jeff Parker issue, but we wanted to know, take the language in the ordinance and show us where exactly on Manitou Ave and other areas is being described in the ordinance. I don't think that's a Jeff Parker issue. I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page about that project.
Thanks. That is not what I heard, so that's great clarification. What I heard is we need to look at the ordinance and really read it and see what it says, right? So that's the issue, is we're all trying to understand that.
Yeah.
And then what's commercial and how. If you want me to hire a surveyor, which we can do, it's going to be fairly expensive. So I do need direction from you.
Well, maybe we all just need to talk a little. John's looking at me like, what are you talking about? What's that look? Well, I don't know if it's a surveyor, but I thought that somebody would be looking at the language in the ordinance and to tell us, based on that wording, whether Manitou Ave is or is not included, and if so, which part of Manitou Ave would be within the description of the ordinance. That's what I took away. If everybody else thought that we agreed on something different, I'll believe you, but that's what I thought. No?
If I could, I suggest that the language is completely ambiguous and that they locked us in, it's bad language. They locked us into it. I think the community will figure that out pretty quickly unless, and I do think it's appropriate to ask Jeff if it can be, if it can be officially interpreted or not. At this point, I don't think it can, but I do think that that's inappropriate.
So we're asking Jeff to tell us if the ordinance is officially interpreted? I don't understand that assignment. What are we asking him to do?
I think I couldn't understand everything he was saying tonight because I
It's hard
can't
to
hear.
Yeah.
And I think that the language is completely ambiguous. I think that that is a huge problem.
But what are we paying him to do?
I think that we can ask him, and I think he was trying to tell us ways to support one interpretation or another. So I would like to have that further, I would like staff to have that further discussion with him. But I'm not in a hurry for that. We've got until in all likelihood January before Judy schedules the election. So I'm
Okay.
guessing.
So we're hiring him to tell us
To advise us.
which version of ambiguity he would guess is intended by the language?
Yeah, otherwise the community just needs to know that it's ambiguous and it could be Higginbotham, it could be the old 7-Eleven, I don't know.
But he won't know that unless he knows how to do the mapping.
There's several things, if you read the ordinance, right, that says it must have 100 parking spaces. So that limits what can happen when you look at that. So that is one limitation.
But it doesn't say it has to be on site. Not that
Right,
I recall.
but it is, here's my thought, and Julie, you're better at this than I am. As you know, the code is not always black and white, and planning commissions, when they do it, they interpret it, and so does staff to some extent. When it goes through the CUP, you will be answering some of those questions if it does get approved and it does go through the CUP. But you guys are struggling with the understanding of what it means, but then you're asking us to go and figure out what it means, which is, it's not clear. We will do the best that we can based on how we read the code, and we will ask Jeff for his opinion, but that is the best I can do because it is not black and white. You guys are struggling. We're struggling. I will give you my professional opinion and planning's professional opinion with Jeff's professional opinion, but that's the best I can do at this point.
That'd be great. And just for me, because I'm not good at, when I read stuff about 100 feet from here and take a left and go, I have no idea. But for me, it would be helpful. I don't need Jeff to, try to be psychic and guess, what a judge would say if it went to court. I want to know, okay, it's ambiguous. So it might include this area of Manitou Ave, or it might not. It clearly doesn't include the east end of Manitou Ave, so that much I know. But it would help me just to see a map or some drawing to show me the ordinance might be talking about this, or it might just be talking about Higginbotham Flats area. That's just one piece of what I was hoping to see, because otherwise I have no idea.
Yeah, and here's a perfect example, Julie. When you read this, it says, center or retail marijuana store provides at least 100 parking spaces for its customers and business invitees. Now, you did state, which is true, you can interpret it, does that mean it has to be on site, or does that mean it has to be off-site? There is very few places in this city that you can even find 100 parking spaces. So
I don't need to pay Jeff to interpret that sentence for me, because I think that's kind of a silly assignment. But it would be helpful if he could talk about everything what we've said already.
So I guess I would ask is, what I'm hearing is you would like for us to interpret this the best to our interpretation and say, here are the spots that it could be at based on this interpretation, and that we will figure out how that is. And if that means we need to call Jeff, we get the approval to do that and to manage accordingly and bring that back to you, because we do need, I am going to need some advice as we go forward, because it is open for interpretation to some extent.
Yeah, I think rather than spend a whole lot of money trying to second guess the ambiguity, I guess my thought would be that we try something with some common sense and come up with a map, something that would be useful both to us and to the voters, and realize that we're making some assumptions, you know. You could maybe have a closet and then have people shuttled in from somewhere else, you know, as far as the parking thing. So it's really hard to second guess that, and I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of money, but I do think by going through that exercise, we'll have a better appreciation for some of the pitfalls in the way that it's written now, as well as some idea what might happen. We can pass that on to the public, if that sounds like a reasonable approach. So okay. All right, well, we've got to the magic hour. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
We have a motion?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, thanks. Have a good evening, everybody.